What's up guys, it's ReapsUS here, and I'm back here with another interesting video, and rather a quiz today. It's a $1 billion quiz. My question to you and your company is, how do you protect your company against corporate espionage and government surveillance? If you're using a Western-owned cloud service, you've already failed. We've learned more than ever in the West that things can change fast, and your assets can be seized, and your company could be shut down. Your wealth and your assets are at risk here. We live in an era where the average data breach can cost millions or even billions of dollars, according to a new IBM report. And in some cases, yeah, they can be in the billions. And even if we're just millions today, the loss you face today could have been worth something billions in the future, even if you're just a startup. Or if you're a very established large company, you could be risking it all if you're not taking care of these factors we're going to talk about. So we're seeing companies trying to protect their data, their crypto, and their wealth. And even Fortune 500s are being hacked for their data. Companies are moving their data to us from the big guys because they know their data is being tapped by the government and they're at risk of losing their advantage. So this video is going to explain some of the ways you can protect your company against prying eyes, hackers, and the government. So there's many approaches you'll need to take to secure your data against corporate and government espionage, but today I'm going to focus on the 3 factors that are often overlooked. Okay, number 1, where are you keeping your data? What location is it? What jurisdiction is the company who is managing your data under? And is it a jurisdiction that just doesn't hand over your data to the bad guys freely? Okay, so you have to make sure as well, number 2, that if your data or service are seized, that the data is not easily accessible even by your provider. Okay, so this is not the case for many companies. There's a lot of complexities in managing this type of system and service, but it can be done. And number 3, you want to use a service that offers some assurance and barrier to seizing your data. So why should you be worried about your data? Well, we can look at this case here where one company wanted an advantage over another, and instead of acquiring, which is kind of the normal behavior in the corporate world you would hope would happen, instead it was just easier and cheaper to pay hackers to steal this proprietary data. So your company could be at risk if you're not managing your data properly. And believe me, I've seen a lot of big companies that were just wide open, that had very little safeguards or understanding of just how easy it was to access their data. So you don't want to be one of those. Obviously, it's way cheaper to prevent this than to suffer the loss if you have your intellectual property stolen or if you have a data breach. It might even be indirect. Just knowing that you had a huge data breach might lose you a lot of customers, right? So because corporate hackers and the NSA and its 5 Eyes and other members of PRISM surveillance network, as we'll kind of show here, if you don't know what it is, it was a secret NSA operation, which generally involves most Western countries. The 5 Eyes, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand are the primary members, but there's a lot of other Western allies, especially in Europe, which are part of this program. What it means is that they're tapping all the communications that they come into contact with, and many, if not all, tech companies in PRISM countries are essentially tapping your data, right? And this includes Google and questionably Amazon. We can see that Amazon, they didn't really say much about the release here. All the US tech companies are, subject to FISA and the PRISM program. So for them to initially deny they weren't part of it, as they all did, many of these companies like Google and Apple said, no, we don't do that. And then it came out that they did do that. So if you're with companies that are a part of PRISM, you are at risk. Your data is already being tapped. So if you don't want this to happen, let's talk about what we can do about those, or look at some of the examples. Another way that your data could be lost is not only that it's malicious necessarily. Let's talk about this case here in the US, where a Swiss-based company had their entire fleet of servers seized for basically unknown reasons by the FBI. So you might think, okay, well, our company doesn't do anything illegal, and I don't think most companies do anything illegal. Definitely our clients are not that type. But here's the thing. They took the entire fleet of servers. So there would have been other clients. Let's say, client A, one out of like thousands, maybe did something wrong or was the subject of that investigation. However, if you had data there, that's all now gone and lost and offline. It's only costing your company money, even if you don't believe it's compromised. But you can be sure of one thing, the FBI now has all of your company data. Okay, and speaking of the FBI, I think I can argue that their de facto jurisdiction is nearly the entire world. Certainly any allies and part of the prison spying network, they're subject to the so-called data privacy laws in Switzerland. Your data is not at all safe in the typical recommended countries to host your data, as the FBI will either directly seize your assets or get Europol to do it, as we can show here. And in fact, Europol may even tap your business data and communications, even if your company is not the subject of the search and accused of wrongdoing. So of course, if your company is accused even falsely though, you can expect that you'll be tapped by Europol or another government agency. So look at this example of a company servers being secretly seized, and the services were allowed to continue. However, they were tapped and the privacy of the company and all of its users' communication through those servers were completely compromised. And going back to the FBI, they directly seized servers in London, as you can see here. They were actually operating as if it was their own country. They seized the hard drives at that news organization. So interestingly enough, though, the hard drives were eventually returned, but obviously the data was compromised. The company didn't trust it. What a mess! Even if if you get the data back, well, you've been offline for that bit, and so it causes an interruption and loss to your company, whether or not you had done anything wrong. So yeah, why is this important here? So we've seen such a shift during the pandemic here, and we've seen so much of this over. There's all these new revelations, which the bottom line comes down to this, is that your data is not safe in the West. So where can you put your data that's safe? Well, I'm going to argue Hong Kong. That's the reason why we set up in Hong Kong. And I can say we've never had the government make any request for our company's data, for our customers' data. They're not interested in what we're doing there, or what they're a haven for large, legitimate business worldwide. So they don't want to tarnish that reputation, right? That's a big part of their GDP, right? Being an international hub in Asia. And so there's a lot of reasons you would want to be in Hong Kong. And in terms of what I was talking about earlier on here, Hong Kong is a location that has the rule of law, but they don't just march into to the data center and seize your data and tap your data. And this certainly we can attest to that, otherwise we wouldn't be operating in Hong Kong. So yeah, we've kind of, with number one, you can solve that problem. Hong Kong obviously is a jurisdiction that doesn't just submit to the will of the FBI. It doesn't just hand over user data, so you can solve that problem there. Number two, this is something that's a little bit location independent, but still, you hope you're in a location where the risk of seizure is very low, which I believe Hong Kong is. So, but you want to make sure that if your data or servers are seized, that it's not easily accessible, even by your provider, even by us, as trustworthy as we are. The situation you want is where we as a provider have to tell anyone if it were to happen. It's never happened, but see, it did. Well, we can't give you the keys. We don't have the keys. It's we don't have the key to unlock this data. This is only with the client, right? So it's at that point very hard for anyone under either government or espionage operation to just go and take your servers and seize them. Okay, and so yeah, I believe that's why we offer a service that offers this assurance, and it's a barrier to seizing your data. We talk all about Hong Kong in other videos here, but it's a fantastic place in the world in terms of routing, in terms of a stable and safe place to keep your data, aside from these other issues. So you can not only expand your business by putting a lot of your assets into Hong Kong, but you can safeguard your assets in a place that does have the rule of law, and a place that didn't change like we saw in the West during the pandemic. So that, I think, is the best way to protect yourself if you use our service here. It's called a Zero-Eye service. We created large clusters of servers which are fully encrypted with multiple layers of encryption that even we don't have access to, and a separate network and set of servers for these different clients. And there's lots of ways we can obfuscate who's there. We don't just put all of the IPs under the name of ABC company, but makes them a really easy target. Then suddenly you have a good idea of what is stored where. So there's a lot of solutions we have for doing that. We'll bring in private fiber optic lines, anything from 10G to 100G and multiple circuits from multiple providers. So we're really good at providing a mission critical, safe and secure solution for you to host your company, your data, and protect your intellectual property and your wealth from espionage and government surveillance. So if you're not okay with any of the stuff I talked about happening from above, in a nutshell, that's a great part of what we do. And even if you're not considering what we're doing here, please consider these questions. Let's talk about it in the comments section below. What are you doing to make sure your company is not the victim of this espionage or this government surveillance here? So there's a lot of ways, obviously, some companies handle it, but if you're not handling it, then you may want to look at our contact information below and get in touch with us and look at the options for at least migrating some of your important data to a safe, secure, and reliable location under a jurisdiction which is also equally safe and reliable, guys. So anyway, those are my thoughts, guys. This has been Reeps US here. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.